David. I will start with the thank yous. Thank you, Octavio and Mapas. Thank you, Adriana. Thank you also, Jordi, for the intros. So the panel, the title is Who, How, and Where is the Management of My Rights? So we'll be talking about publishing rights. We will be talking about collective management. As Adriana was pointing out at the beginning, collective management is a key point of all the digital licensing process. And CMOs and independent management entities, they play a key role in all this process. So we need to understand how this works. I think that the challenges of collective management, like documentation, transparency, speed of collection and distribution, I think somehow are universal around the world, and I think it's important and necessary that we, as Jordi was saying at the beginning, we share experience and views on that, and I think it's an excellent opportunity to have people from South America, Africa, the privileged view of CISAC, always interesting. So David did a bit of my job in introducing the panelists, but yeah, if you're so kind, you can briefly explain what you do and what's your profile and CVs, Cristina.
Okay, well, I'm Cristina Perpiñá. I'm head of legal and policy at CISAC. CISAC is the international. You can't hear me? All right. Can you hear me now? Nope. Sorry.
Little second, so we can settle this.
Running? Yeah? Now it works, yes.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
Excellent.
So CISAC is the International Confederation of Societies of Authors and Composers. So we have as members, all my colleagues on the panel are members of CISAC. It's the CMOs of, we have more than 200 CMOs which are members of CISAC and representing collective management organizations from more than 120 countries. So CISAC's role is, I'll explain it a little bit more afterwards, but its role is to ensure the best legal and technical scenario for collective management, which in place is the benefit for creators. Just to clarify, CISAC does not only administer or have members from music CMOs, we also represent audiovisual, literary, and visual arts. And my background comes also from Sky, which many people here are aware of. It's a Spanish CMO for music and audiovisual. And so I have, let's say, a big experience in the CMO world.
Excellent. Solange, please.
Yeah, okay. First of all, I would like to thank Mapas and Unison for the invitation and this special moment with our great colleagues that we haven't seen a long time ago. And thank you for attending our panel. I'm a singer and Cape Verdean songwriter. I'm also president of the Cabo Verde Music Society, this collective management organization in the field of music. And what we do, it's we protect the copyright and related rights of our members that are authors, composers, artists, labels, publishers. And our main mission is collect and distribute these rights and properly make sure that they are properly protect and collect in the world through our partnership with our CMOs, as Unison, as Abramos, as Capasso, through the CISAC, the International Confederation.
Excellent. Gustavo, your turn,
Thank you.
please.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Mapas, for the invitation. Very happy to be here for the first time. And I'm Director of International Relations and Business Affairs of Abramos, which is one of the CMOs in Brazil. We have 7 CMOs in Brazil, but I'll explain this later. I'm also a lawyer from a consultancy firm from my own, and I'm directly involved with many CISAC working groups. I'm chair of the Society Publisher Forum, representing CSAC. I'm also involved in the Business Technical Committee and on the ISC from CSAC as well. So I'm deeply involved in different committees over there to see what's going on. So it's a lot of work. And I'm also in charge of the operations of Abramos Digital, which is our hub from Abramos to handle digital rights in Brazil.
Excellent. Jotam, you already explained what Capasso is a little bit, but if you're so kind to explain a little bit your profile and CV.
Thanks, Jordi. So, as mentioned earlier, my name is Jotam. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Capasso, which is a reproduction rights society in South Africa. We are also the digital licensing hub for Africa, and also just to thank Unison and Mapas for inviting me here, and also to mention that David was actually part, when he was still with SCM, David was part of the formation of the digital licensing hub in Africa. As we were setting it up, we were together with David, so that's where our relationship starts. Thank you.
Brilliant. Cristina, we'll start with you. You already explained a little bit what's CSAC all about, but I want you to focus a little bit. We're talking about digital environment. What CSAC is doing or does in terms of the tools and all infrastructure that we need to manage the digital rights properly. And if you could a little bit explain what's these tools, SysNet, and how this helps CMOs and independent management entities to properly manage digital rights?
Well, probably Gustavo would be better to answer this because I don't have a technical, I have to say I don't have a technical
General
background.
terms, like,
but I do want to also take advantage of this question to say also a few other things which CSAC does, which are things which also CMOs do, which I think is very relevant. I mean, obviously the first purpose of a collective management organization is to collect and to distribute. But CMOs also provide a lot of services for their members, which are not just related to collecting and distributing. So CMOs, through CSAC, we provide social and cultural services to members. We provide very, very strong lobbying activities to make sure that the legal situation, the legal jurisdictions everywhere have the best possible legal regime for creators. That obviously we do that through our members, but just as an example, right now we're heavily lobbying in South Africa to make sure that the copyright law which is being passed is a fair law for creators. And as it was mentioned, I think before by Capasso during your presentation, CSAC also has very strict professional rules and binding resolutions, which means that any society which is a member of CSAC has to reach that level of professional rules regarding governance, regarding transparency, regarding rules on distribution. If the society does not comply with those rules, you can get expelled from CSAC. So it's a seal of quality of the CMO that all CMOs which are members of CSAC have to have this very high standards. So apart from lobbying and apart from and the technical tools, which I'll get into, another thing, through these social and cultural activities, CSAC is able to immediately provide very quick support to members when something is happening. And I'll just give the example of Ukraine.
Yep, that's
Because of the war in Ukraine, CSAC immediately launched a Creators for Ukraine campaign in order to receive funds from our members, and we had a lot of solidarity from our CMO members, provided almost 2 million euros immediately to support the Ukrainian society and the Ukrainian authors, literally just sending money to get Ukrainian creators out of Ukraine, provide medicine, food, shelter, everything we could find. That was an immediate reaction from our members. And we launched also the Songs for Ukraine by trying to make sure that Spotify and most services would include Ukrainian music in their playlists to make sure that that would mean more royalty for creative, for Ukrainian music. So it's this all, additionally from just collecting and distributing, there's a lot of services which CMOs provide which are not, but just because of the fact that they're owned by creators, they're not profit. So this means that there's this enormous amount of solidarity, which is through collective management to support creators, especially, and the Ukrainian situation is an example, but another one would be during the COVID pandemic. Again, CSAC lobbied very heavily to try to get strong protection for creators, to make sure the European funds, which were being distributed, for example, were being allocated to culture. So that's part of course, of CSAC. But yes, of course, CSAC also, we administer the SysNet network, which is the network of databases which interconnect by all the CMOs. So all the challenges we've heard this morning, they're not going to be solved by CSNet, obviously, but it's part of the system to try to ensure that the exchange of information regarding works and regarding the creators and owners of the works is using the ISWC identifiers, which were also mentioned before, to try to introduce as much as possible the use of ISWC and IPIs, which is the identifier of creators and rights owners, and those identifiers to introduce them as much as possible, to disseminate them as much as possible, so that the industry uses these identifiers as much as possible. So we are launching the past 2 years, and Gustavo knows more about this because I'm in legal and he's in the ISC. Projects to allocate ISWCs, disseminate ISWCs, provide ISWC information to publishers, to DSPs. That's part of the projects which CSAC is very much involved in to try to solve this, what we called before, I think Adriana mentioned, the value gap. We maybe need to talk about the data, the data gap, which we have and which is the big challenge right now.
Excellent. We'll come back later for the ISWC topic, but I wanted to ask you, Solange, that you explain a little bit what is about SCM and your experience of becoming from an artist to the president of this CMO, and just present the CMO itself.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, SM was created in 2013. It's a young CMO. And the reason, of course, of our action was we could not postpone 1 minute more for the legitimate dream to have our rights protected. Mm-hmm. And we were 27 founders, musicians, artists, composers, songwriters, publishers, and producers that represented labels. And we decided to take the right action to help change the narrative in Cabo Verde. Cabo Verde, it's a small country. We have 10 islands in the middle of Atlantic Ocean, but we are huge because of our music. Normally, our music is well known because of our great diva, Cesarovna, one of the most important Cape Verdean ambassadors in the world. But unfortunately, maybe 4 years ago, before that short period of time, in whole music history of Cabo Verde, the composers and the creators and the artists were not able to receive their rights, were not able to protect their rights. And of course, we understood that this is the moment to change this narrative. We created the CMO. We understood that we could not continue asking what's going on, or in our meetings between musicians or after the concerts, or ask the government what's going on, if we can have a better legislation. We understood that we need to contribute. At some point, you don't need to ask what's going on. It's up to us, creators, artists that have these rights, to fight to them. So we created the CMO. We applied to be a member of CSAC. We had all this support that Cristina just said to make sure that we would grow and we will be properly working, that we will understand the business. Now we have a lot of agreements of reciprocity with different CMOs in the world. We are part of the initiative of African Digital Hub that I think that is very, very important for us. Now we can do a correct registration of the works. We can collect in Cabo Verde and in the world, in the conventional sector, but in the digital sector. And in 2020, in the pandemic time, we did the first distribution. We also have WIPO support, CISAC and WIPO support. We are using WIPO Connect tools that allows us to do the first distribution. And through the pandemic, in 2020 and 2021, our members, the only resources that they had was the copyright that we distribute. So in Cabo Verde, now we feel the value of the creation of the Cabo Verde Music Society, and we are very happy with this decision because we are seeing results, and we believe that the future would be much more better because the value of the music, we even don't know nowadays how much the value of the music will be in the future, but we believe that it will be a huge value. So this is very important decision, and we are very happy to contribute for this cause.
Amazing achievement in so little time. So congrats for that, really. Jotam, I wanted to ask you a question. Capasso is well known as a mechanical rights society, but I wanted, since we are talking about digital, Capasso as African hub of digital licensing. How was the journey until you reached this position, and which were the main challenges?
Okay, so with Capasso, I think the journey has not been very easy, but also it was not very difficult, obviously, because we were formed at a time, there were a number of issues that had happened within the South African music industry with regards to our predecessor, Sala, and also knowing what was happening across the continent, the mistrust of collective management by composers, artists, and all that. So when we started, when Capasso was formed, firstly, the intention was to address the issue of transparency, and secondly, it was the issue of distributions, to say the core business of a collective society is completed only when the distributions have been made, and also the issue of the cost-to-income ratio, which needed to be controlled and properly managed. And this is why, firstly, Capasso still has a fixed commission in terms of how much that we can be able to use from the royalties that we collect, and also what are the issues that need to be addressed. Strict distribution timetable. You go onto the Capasso website, you see the distribution timetable. As a member, part of the membership rules also show the commission that will be deducted and the distribution timetable, which makes it easy in a member making a decision before they join Capasso to say, these are the expectations, and as management, we make sure that we do meet those issues. The biggest challenge that we had at the beginning was to do with the metadata, and I think for a very long time in South Africa, and I suppose throughout the world, collective management, particularly on the songwriter side, we had relied a lot on record labels to provide the start notices. When they sell the CDs, they report to us and tell us what has been sold and all that, and then we use that information for distribution. It had never been something that the CMO took as part of the work in South Africa, particularly, to be able to go to the members to ask them to submit the works and the splits that are supposed to be used for distribution. So when we started in 2014, we were basically relying on the start notices. But when we were formed, it was a time when consumption was changing from physicals to digital. In 2014, for example, in South Africa, in our currency, physicals were 16 million rand. That is in 2014. And I was talking to Gustavo yesterday and yourself. Right now, for the period July to December 2021, it was 0. So you can see how much it changed over the period to an extent that there's no physical at all, but we were relying on the information that was. So when we tried to take that same information, which was in the physicals, and put it onto the DSPs, to use that to claim from the DSPs, there were lots of counterclaims. Because now what was happening is that as people were notifying, were putting their works onto the digital platforms, some of the splits were incorrect as well, but some of the splits were now being corrected. And then when we started claiming, firstly, there were counterclaims which were caused by wrong percentages, counterclaims which are caused by cover-ins, and then you also had situations where people were claiming for something that they never controlled, because when you put it on there and there's no counterclaim, you can just get paid, nobody queries it, and then life goes on. So it was a huge challenge where somebody was claiming, but then when you get your member to notify you, they give you the splits, and then you claim, and then you see it is in conflict, you get in touch with the person in which it is in conflict, and you ask them, why, can you please prove your claim here? You realize that, and then they say, okay, we withdraw our claim, and we will pay you for whatever we have received. But now remember, it's an 18-month window where we can be able to see, because we can only claim for the past 18 months. We don't know whatever they received post the 18 months. So we can only legitimately look at what they have received within the past 18 months, and all along they've been. So there have been huge challenges which are really caused by the issue of metadata. We have been able to overcome that, I think, in South Africa specifically, but we still have a challenge across the continent where we still need that data to come in. But what we have realized to be the solution is to make sure that when we receive the money, we distribute it, we get the confidence of the members, and then the members will be able to come and volunteer their splits through to us.
Totally. Let's move to Brazil, Gustavo. Yeah, Abramos is a landmark CMO of Brazil, and it's a huge market with 300 million people there. But Brazil has a unique model with a cut, and I would like you to explain the audience how, in headlines, how it works, and what's the role of Abramos Digital on this landscape.
So, but before answering that, just let me make a comment on Christina's comment and his comments as well, just to realize that as you asked, the challenge on the digital world from CSAC and what we are facing on the societies and what's the goal at the moment. What's being driven on CSAC at the moment is digital is changing everything very quickly. And the changes that are occurring in the market have been are happening. And most of the times we are not, as a CMOs, we're not prepared for what's going on. The changes are happening, the DSPs are providing new solutions, new ways to consume music, to be involved with the artists and everything. So the goal at CSAC at this moment is to change the formats we're currently using as the CWR, which is used for documenting works, the CRD, which is a distribution format. So what we're doing on a working group basis and with publishers and everybody is to adapt those formats to the new reality of what we have on the digital side. So include more information and try to make this information make a more fluid relation between societies and publishers and the DSPs, and getting all parts involved in order to make the information being spared quicker between all the parts. So if we have, as he was saying, a good documentation in the beginning of the process is the key for a good distribution to the right holders. So this is the key part that all societies and all the DSPs, they're very much engaged in this concern as well, to pay the writer, to pay the creator, to pay the responsible for that information, which is the key to what we are doing here. We are here because of the creators. We are here because of the ones that write music. So we need to make the money get to them as quick as possible and with more information as possible. So CSAC is helping us as societies in order to create this environment where we can have the discussion and pushing societies and publishers and everybody involved in this chain of rights in order to make the information quicker, transparency, and more efficient, and as per se. So regarding Brazil, I'm probably going to enter into details in my presentation, but Brazil, it's very a unique market. We enter into the digital world a bit late, as per se, compared to what's happening in Europe and North America. So the first store to open the operations in Brazil was iTunes back in 2011. And since that, the structure in Brazil we had was not very good to collect royalties on digital stuff. Everything was still a big discussion. So Brazil originally, we normally have many CMOs working in the country, but according to the Brazilian law of music copyrights from 1973, we were supposed to have a central office to make the collection of rights, which is ICAD. So ICAD was created originally in 1978 to centralize the collection of royalties in Brazil. So we have one entity that does all the collection in Brazil, and this office, it's pretty much what Capasso is doing for digital and other hubs are doing for digital now all over the world. But we have this hub, which is ICAD, working for us for performing rights. So ICAD is collecting, is representing it's one tariff for licensing like a broadcaster or radio, and the distribution flows to each society who represents the right holders. In Brazil, it's very unique because we also represent neighboring rights as well. We not only represent authors' rights, we do manage neighboring rights. So it's good because we have the combined information. We receive the ISRCs from the record companies, we receive the ISWCs, ICAD is the hub from the generating ISWCs in Brazil, so we have this information combined. And I think we are the only country in the world doing this model, and it's pretty good because we combine the track information, we track the work information, and most of the times we have the cue sheet as well, with all the information connected. So this is pretty good in a way in the world we live in today, where the digital demands this speed and having processing and transparency and a lot of information is being in the flow. Because it makes much more easy, makes much more sense. We can connect all the parts because everything's linked through codes again. And the way things are moving in Brazil and in other countries is the growth of the VOD service as well on the digital side. So because we connect all the parts in Brazil, it's very simple for us to connect all of that. In terms of digital in Brazil, the splits between performing rights and mechanical rights is 75% to mechanical rights, 25% for performing rights. And the mechanical rights is being collected by the publishers originally. Because we had a society in Brazil doing this in the past, the traditional mechanicals, but the society was not very efficient. So the publishers took off the rights to collect themselves directly. And they have a publishing organization called UBEM, who represents a few publishers, and they manage the rights. In order to help the market, we created Brahms Digital back in 2011 to represent digital rights as well. And it's growing a lot. We have around 360 publishers today in this hub. And it's working pretty well. We represent Unisong, we represent other CMOs in Brazil as well, Mexico in Brazil, and other societies again. So it's working very good. Digital market in Brazil is growing a lot. It also, nowadays it represents 20% of the collection of the performing rights. We license all the VOD platforms in Brazil, so it's growing a lot. And I think digital is going to be the future of music. Today, maybe the relevance is not that big yet in some countries. In others are huge. For example, I have the example of Mexico, where the collection in Mexico, it's about 50% of what they're collecting in Mexico today comes from digital. So one of the societies that do not feel at all the effects of the pandemic, of the COVID-19, because digital was growing, the rest of the market was decreasing, but the digital was growing. So they grew during the pandemic. So it was a very good example for us to follow. And well, regarding Latin, I think I can talk more on my presentation, so I do not take the time here.
Excellent. You have only 5 minutes left, and David is saying. So I have a bunch of questions that I didn't make. So I just want to steal one of David's panel questions and bring it here, and it's the one about the value gap, and the streaming is currently more or less half of the market. The publishing side of things is only 30%. Songwriter has to also share it with the publisher. So to all of the panelists, why do you think this is happening? Do you think that the solution is to increase the correlation between or the value of the publishing rights versus masters, or should we fight for DSPs raising prices? I'll leave it to you.
I mean, this was discussed in the previous panel, and I agree completely that there needs to be a discussion on whether the split of the pie should give a little bit more to creators. But I do think that we also need to have a discussion on the prices of the services. I mean, in my opinion, it was mentioned also that probably I'm even older, no? If we're talking about CDs, I've gone to buy vinyl records, no? Mm-hmm. And I remember when I used to buy a record, it was practically my entire allowance. Then it was 3,000 pesetas, I can't remember how much that is in euros. It would be to buy a record, and you would get one record. And you valued that record because it had cost you. And now, I mean, streaming services are charging practically the same they've been charging for the past 10, 15 years. For what's $9.99. And $9.99, you're getting all the catalog of music in the world. And I do think that people have to value that that songs need to cost a little bit more. That's the way you appreciate it. And I don't think that people will go directly to piracy if the music streaming model increases the price. Obviously, I'm not a business expert in this, but I do think that there has to be some reflection on the fact that 15 years ago, $9.99, you got maybe, 10,000, 15,000 works. Same price now, you're getting, millions of works. And I've got 4 kids. They all want Spotify, they all want Netflix, they all want HBO, they want everything. But then they also want the mobile phone, internet access, and all that. And when you see everything which is paid and the amount which is paid to get the content, I think we need to reflect on the need to increase the prices of the services.
More thoughts on that over there?
Yeah, I think that, again, I don't think it's, as we discussed it yesterday, I don't think it's fair how it's the split between the record part and the author's part. I think we should increase the author rights on that. But what would be the fair number? I don't know. Not even try to judge that because it's complicated. But of course, I think the authors need to receive more. I mean, for digital, we apply most of the times the concept of the mechanical we are used to. So we're pretty much following the market change, but we're still applying most of the concepts we have from the physical world, the traditional mechanical. But digital is something very different. And most of the creators complain, well, I'm not receiving as much as I used to receive when I was selling CDs. But on the other hand, your music is available for the world. I mean, and different artists, it's much more democratic because I come from Brazil, which is a huge country with different types of music. And some types of music which was supposed to be from the favelas, from marginal music that would not play in radios or be on the TV and stuff, they have been consumed digital, and there are artists that are receiving a lot of money. But if we thought about those artists 10, 15 years ago, they would not be they would not be not even recording an album because they would not have the chance. And today they have access to this because the business model we have today. So it's more democratic, and people need to understand that it's a different kind of market. It's a long tail. Once you put the music there, the music's there, and it's going to be there forever. So it's a way of thinking different, and we still need to adapt in a way, as Cristina said, we're not having the product anymore, we're just consuming the product. As long as we pay, we are consuming. And one of these slides I kept, it's regarding the price of the Spotify. I got Spotify, for example, in Europe and in Latin America. And there's a huge difference between each country, how much you pay for the subscription. And that's the value as well. I mean, in Brazil, we have around, we have 220 million inhabitants in Brazil, and 13 million subscribers of Spotify, as the latest number I get. Half of that is paying the premium service. And I mean, the premium service, we have family plans and stuff, so probably it's much more people than the 50 million. And half of that is not paying, is using the free service. And that free service generates 5% of the revenue we're receiving from Spotify. Right. So it's a kind of model. I mean, the platforms they need to have the free service, for sure. But we need to increase the revenue that's coming from that free service as well, because it's very little today. So this will also help the creators, will help the industry as well. But this is
So in addition to what Gustavo was saying, so you find that the streaming services as well, like they look at the population in Africa, for example, because South Africa and Nigeria have got huge populations, and in South Africa it's in addition to the huge usage and all that. So what they do is, for South Africa and Nigeria, they use the local currency to pay. But for all the other smaller markets, they use the US dollar. And obviously you can see the economics that are being played there is to say, if we are to use the US dollar for South Africa and Nigeria, it means at the end of the day, we'll be paying much more. So I think to your point, the amount that is being charged by these streaming services needs to be reviewed. And also I think in terms of the discussion that needs to happen between the record labels and the publishers as well, I think it is important to have that discussion as well, because we are talking about, with digital, things have become easier in terms of processing. You can't compare the amount of time and the cost and everything which is charged when you are processing manually and when you are processing on digital. Of course, the capital layout might be huge, but as time goes on, that amount gets recovered, and then you'll be able to recover. So you find that record labels might have actually still, there's an argument that probably record labels are still maintaining things like the breakages and all those things in that cost. And this is why they are claiming a huge amount from what the publishers eventually get. I think that discussion needs to come to a discussion to say, yes, we understand historically record labels were incurring these expenses, but what expenses have gone away when we moved to the digital platforms, and that benefit is supposed to be shared. It can't remain on the other side. It's got to be shared between the composers and the artists.
Solange?
Yeah, definitely. Just to say that I totally agree with Cristina, Gustavo, and Jotam, and taking again the same words that Gustavo said. We are here and because of someone is creating the music, and so we had the chance to be here in the market and discussing the different models of business that we have that, and the world breathe music. Music, it's absolutely necessary, essential for our life. And what we understand that we still need to have a serious and deep discussion with all interest parts, and make sure that we will be able to have as much fair deal contracts as possible, that each part can play its role, but fairly remunerated. And this discussion needs to put in the middle of this point, is the creator fairly paid or not? because what we feel, and this is not just a feeling, it's an answer that we are having from our members, that in digital, unfortunately, the creators, they are not remunerated as they are supposed to be. And what we should do to understand how we need to do this deal, how the splits should do, if the model should change or if the model should adapt, that we make sure that we will do fair deals. This is something that we think that globally we are discussing, not just in big markets, but in small markets. Sometimes some models also are good for big markets, but for small markets, they they are not tuned to what small markets needs. Yes, even just to say, in our market in Cabo Verde, it's very difficult even to monetize the creators' music in the digital platforms. So what we need to do, it's important conversation and take a decision collectively, because the most important and beauty thing that we can do, it's a collective decision that makes sure that each single part of this business, that each of us are very important for the future of music, would be working together to have the fairly trade contract that we need, and make sure that the one that creates the music, the one that creates the song, it's very remunerated, and it's defended in the whole world, because the beautiful thing of the digital, maybe it's the distribution. You can be in the whole world, and this is good as well. But how property make sure that this creator, maybe from Cabo Verde, would be remunerated when this song it's used on it's in a Japan market. This is a question that every single people that is in the room, that's in the music, should contribute to the best future that we can have. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I'm afraid we don't have much time for more, so I want to close the panel by giving you a big thank you for all the panelists and participating in this, and if we can move on to the Q&A by the audience. If anyone has a question, go ahead. Anyone?
I think there's a question. Two in the back.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Oh, yes.
Thank you so much for the very interesting discussion. I'm Sonia from Morocco. I'm representing a festival music meeting, and I'm a singer-songwriter as well. And I had a question to you, Christine and Solange, about how it works for like to do lobbying and social and cultural activities that you talked about earlier. We have a CMO society called BMDA, the Bureau Marocain du Droit d'Auteur, and it's a part of the SISAC, I think. And the thing is, we have to change the narrative that you talked about, Solange, about, like, for example, if like a cafe or a festival or a radio uses the music, like it needs to, like the money needs to flow back to the writer, the composer, the artist. But the thing is, the system is still very opaque. Like, it's not transparent enough in Morocco, because also there's a narrative to change about, like, it's normal to, you know, to give back if you use it. And my question was, like, what type of lobbying or social activities can be done to change this, to change the mentalities? And thank you very much.
What's the question for me?
Who wants to take that?
So
we don't do.
yes, we think that, of course, again, work together, it's very important. So we have in CISAC different committees. We make, SM, Capasso make part of African committee that the Moroccan CMOs makes part as well. We have been in a few meetings before COVID and now, of course, online meetings. The important thing is, of course, we still need strong awareness campaign, but education for our creators, and to make sure that each single creator properly understand the value of a collective managed organization, but as well the value of what have been said here of deliver the correct data, making sure that the relationship that the creator has with its CMOs, it's very close relationship that he can deliver the works before even launching them in the platform, in the digital platforms, to make sure that they would have the proper identified codes like ASWC, ASRC, IPI, so we can follow this work after if it's playing here in Canarias or in Japan or in other DSP, yes, in online market. So it's very important to make sure that together we still make stronger the value of a collective managed organization. What we do on educating our members and our increase the number of our members, that all creators should be a member of a collective management organization to protect their rights, but also to work together like we are working in Digital African Hub to make sure that in this new digital age that we are living, we will be strong enough and working as professional as possible with all the operation and ICT resources that we need, property working to make sure that we will deliver the best work we can deliver to the creators, to you, to who are working, to are creating. So the important thing as well is the partnership of CISAC that always give us the best guidelines, that always allowed us to be connected between each other, and also with the other hubs and the other CMOs that have much more experience because they are older and because they start before in digital, that had the chance to share with us and to teach us how to proceed and how to do a better job. I think that this is all about working as together as possible and make sure that we understand properly any change and any new goal of this digital new age, and make sure that we will be working together with our user partners as well to do the best job that we can do to protect the rights, to collect them and to distribute correctly for the owners, for the creators.
So maybe if I can just add slightly on her question as well. I think Solange, you are slightly different from the rest of our creators on the continent, because you find that Solange tries to get into the administration part to understand exactly how it is done and all that. And you find that CISAC has got also SIAM, which is associated with CISAC, which is basically for composers. And the entire continent, it's only Solange who has been part of SIAM. There is no other composer on the African continent. I was talking to Solange the other time, and she was telling me, Jotam, don't you have composers in South Africa who are interested to join SIAM? And I spoke to a whole lot of them, and none of them was interested. And I think it is the same situation with most countries, Morocco included. Yes, we have the MDA, we know them, and you see, the thing is, most of the societies on the African continent are government entities. So we all know how sometimes, if it is a government entity, the bureaucracy and everything that is there, composers do not really have control of what is happening there because it is a government entity. But if you join organizations like SIAM, you get to understand exactly how collective management organizations can be run. And then when you go and have a chat with BMDA, you understand what you're talking about, and you can be able to advise on the best things that can be done. That would be my advice.
Thank you for that. This is very important. If you want to join SIAM, if anyone want to join SIAM, that it's the Council of CISAC, that is International Council of Authors, Creators in the Music Field, please talk to me. I would be happy to share the contact how you can become a member of SIAM.
Brilliant. And yeah.
Sorry, if I can also just add, building on, so from our perspective, obviously education of creators, absolutely key element, but education of users. Users have to be ready to pay. Currently, the usage of music in a lot of markets are not paid properly. They're not ready to pay the subscription fees. And that's where the education first has to come. Probably organizations, governments, etc. I think that's the key, because then it will flow to creators via CMOs, the systems. But the user has to pay. He has to be ready to pay.
There's one more question, or we don't have any time?
Yeah, there's one more question, I think. Yeah. There's one question.
Es una pregunta breve, en español, no puedo en inglés. Quizás el problema del tema de los pagos, más que educar que hay que educarlo al público, quizás es darle la propiedad. Es decir, cuando compramos discos antiguamente, en vinilo, yo tenía la propiedad, pagaba, pero era mi propiedad. Y yo lo podía oír hoy y dentro de un año. Ahora soy propiedad, entre comillas, de un listado, de una plataforma. En cuanto yo dejo de pagar esa plataforma, pierdo todo ese acceso a la música. Con lo cual yo creo que el problema estaría en acelerar esa propiedad digital para poder poder pagar, pero tenerlo.
Sí, pero ese es el cambio que existe del mundo tradicional para el mundo digital. Porque en el tradicional usted tenía el producto, era el dueño del CD, del vinil, de todo. En el digital no es el dueño, es el consumidor. No tienes la propiedad, tienes el consumo de la música. Es la distinción que hay, que necesitamos entender que es un mercado distinto. Entonces es algo, si quieres tener un producto, se puede comprar un vinil, que son los más populares hoy, que el CD no existe, muy complicado para conseguir un CD, pero el vinil son los más que tiene en el mercado. Pero es la distinción, porque todo va a cambiar. Por ejemplo, no existe más el blockbuster para comprar una película o algo así. Te vas a tener la suscripción en una plataforma de VOD donde te vas a consumir aquel producto, aquel filme, la película, un diseño o algo así. Entonces, es el cambio del mercado, pensar en una manera distinta para entender que digital va a ser así, no va a cambiar el mercado, ese que pasa.
No, de hecho, la descarga ya es casi residual y iTunes cerró su tienda hace algún tiempo ya, ¿sí? O sea que no parece que ese sea el camino, vamos.
Pero quiero decir que esa posibilidad sigue existiendo, es decir, el mercado de los discos y tal sigue existiendo y de hecho está incrementando.
Sí, las ventas de vinilo están subiendo.
Las ventas de vinilo se está volviendo a crecer, ¿no? Pero yo creo que eso ya es un tema de lo que quiere el consumidor. Lógicamente, no voy yo a defender sobre todo a los DSPs aquí, pero está claro que es porque han encontrado un mercado que el público demandaba, ¿no? El de acceso inmediato, catálogos enormes. Lo que decimos aquí es que eso, aunque no sea lo mismo que comprar el vinilo, el valor del contenido musical es lo que hace que ese negocio sea un éxito y por lo tanto tiene, en mi opinión, que estar mejor retribuido el autor y el usuario, el proveedor de música, tiene que valorar también esa música con un mayor valor el precio de su servicio.
Quizá la solución puede estar en los smart contracts, en los NFT, utilizando la blockchain.
We can discussion afterwards. again, thank you so much. Big applause for the panelists.